Tengo la respuesta de qué es lo que sucede al final de la película nueva que van a sacar de Spider-Man el 31 de julio. Así que eso es lo que vamos a estar hablando el día de hoy en el PAI. El PAI es el podcast para aprender inglés y el día de hoy es de nivel avanzado. Entonces, sin dar más preámbulo, vamos a ver y vamos a hablar de qué es lo que va a suceder en la nueva película de Spider-Man. Vamos a por ello. Bien, esa fue la intro. Entonces, you know that this is the advanced episode of the week. So now I can talk normally, as I usually do. Okay, so I have everything ready. I have a lot that I want to talk about this new movie. So let's start from the beginning. From the first part is the psychological collapse of identity of Peter Parker. So let's start with the most important layer of this film, identity. Not superhero identity, not the mask, but the existential identity. Peter Parker is now living in a state that psychology defines as social erasure. No relationships, no recognition, no shared history. He exists, but not only biologically, but only biologically he exists. And that creates a very specific kind of psychological fracture. If nobody remembers you, do you still exist in a meaningful way? This is where Marvel is clearly shifting tone. This is no longer a coming of age story. This is a post-identity narrative. Peter is not balancing two lives anymore. He has lost one completely. And that has consequences. His moral compass becomes unstable. His emotional reputation deteriorates. His need for purpose intensifies, which leads to a dangerous transformation. Spider-Man stops being a role and becomes his only remaining identity. And that is where things begin to break. So, what defines you more? What do you, the person who's listening to this, what do you or who remembers you? So, let's see the body as a battlefield, mutation, and loss of control. Now we move into the physical layer of Spider-Man. Because this film is not only about psychology, it is about biology turning against identity. The trailer strongly suggests something is wrong with Peter's body. Irregular power fluctuations, physical pain, instability in his abilities, the possible return of organic webbing. This is not just aesthetic, this is symbolic. In many Spider-Man comic arcs, mutation represents loss of agency. The body stops obeying the self. And that creates a terrifying scenario. What if Spider-Man is no longer something Peter controls, but something that is happening to him? This connects directly with the idea of the spider totem, a more mystical interpretation of his powers. In that framework, Peter is not just a random accident. He is part of something larger, something ancient, something uncontrollable. And here's where the theory becomes darker. Peter may begin to transform into a more predatory, less human version of Spider-Man. No, not evil, but not fully rational either. A creature driven by instinct, not ethics. So if your own body stopped obeying your values, would you still be yourself? Put it in the comments. So let's see the next block we have here is the invisible enemy, psychological warframe, and mind control. Now let's talk about the villain in the trailer, or more precisely, the absence of a visible one. The trailer shows people acting strangely, coordinated chaos, behavioral inconsistencies. This is not random violence. This is apparent disruption, which suggests something very specific. The antagonist may not operate through force, but through control. And that changes everything because Spider Man is used to fighting external threats. But how do you fight something that lives inside the mind? Popular theories point to a telepathic entity, a hive mind intelligence, or even the introduction of a mutant level psychic presence. And this is where things become strategically important for the MCU. Because if the threat is mental, then the battlefield is not New York, it's perception itself, which opens the door to one of the most powerful narrative twists. What if Peter cannot trust what he sees or even what he remembers? In that scenario, the real conflict is not hero versus villain, is reality versus manipulation. So if your thoughts weren't fully yours, how would you know? So let's see this next one, the science versus ethics. Bruce Banner as the moral mirror. Enter Bruce Banner, not as a hero, as a scientist, and more importantly, as a warning. Banner represents something very specific in the Marvel Universe, the cost of intelligence without control. He is the perfect mirror for Peter's situation. Both are brilliant, altered by science, and living with unstable bodies. But there is a key difference. Banner has already lost control before. Peter hasn't yet. This creates a powerful dynamic. Bruce is not just helping Peter, he is trying to prevent him from becoming another Hulk. But here's the tension, science may not be the solution, it may be the trigger. If Banner attempts to fix Peter's mutation, he could accelerate it because in Marvel's narratives, intervention often leads to escalation. So, if knowledge always is knowledge always the path to control, or something, or sometimes the beginning of chaos? So, let's see. The Punisher versus Spider Man, the ethics of violence. Now we enter the ideological core of the film. The introduction of Punisher is not random, it is philosophical. Because Punisher is not just a character, he is a counter argument. Spider Man means hope, restraint, and responsibility, and the Punisher means vengeance, execution, and finality. They are investigating the same world, but interpreting it differently. And this creates a central moral tension. What happens when a hero starts to understand the logic of someone who kills? Because Peter is vulnerable, emotionally broken, physically unstable, and psychologically isolated. Exactly the kind of person who might begin to question, what if stopping criminals isn't enough? And that's where the real danger lives. Not that Spider Man becomes evil, but that he becomes pragmatic. So, at what point does justice become indistinguishable from revenge? So, a love without memory we have now, the MJ paradox. Now, we move into the emotional dimension of MJ. She represents something deeply painful, a life that still exists but is no longer accessible. Peter sees her, she doesn't see him. And that creates a psychological phenomenon known as asymmetrical emotional continuity. One person remembers everything, the other remembers nothing. This is not just heartbreak. This is identity dissonance because part of who Peter is only exists in someone else's memory. And now that memory is gone, which leads to a devastating implication. Peter is not just alone, he is the only witness of his own past. There are theories suggesting that MJ might begin to feel fragments, not memories, but emotional echoes, a sense that something is missing. And if that happens, it introduces one of the most powerful narrative tensions. Can love exist without memory? So, would you fight? This is for you, the person who's listening. Would you fight for someone who doesn't even know who you are? Sounds like a person that has a lot of problems. Anyways, so this is where everything connects at a macro level. I'm talking about the mutant threshold, a new era for the MCU. The rumors about mutants are not random, they are strategic, but because the elements in this film align perfectly with mutant narratives: genetic mutation, loss of control, psychic interference, and social isolation. This is not coincidence, this is groundwork. The film may function as a traditional bridge between grounded heroes and mutant level threats. And if characters like Jean Grey or similar psychic entities are introduced, then the scale of the MCU changes permanently from physical conflicts to evolutionary conflicts, which leads to a massive implication. Spider Man may become one of the first heroes to experience this shift directly, not as an observer, but as a participant. So, are we watching a Spider Man story or the beginning of something much bigger? Let's see. Urban chaos is the next part we're going to talk about. The return of street level war. After years of multiversal chaos, this film ceased to ground itself again, but not in a simple way, but in a dangerous way. The presence of multiple street level villains suggests not a single threat, but a systemic breakdown. Crime is no longer isolated, it is coordinated, which creates a tone closer to the Batman, crime thrillers, urban decay narratives. Spider-Man is no longer saving the world. He's trying to survive a city that is collapsing from within. And in that context, even a hero can become overwhelmed. I'm going to take 1 second to sip on my water. Thank you for giving me that short break. I've been talking non-stop for 15 minutes. Okay. Can one person still make a difference in a system that is already broken? So, we have the ninth block called narrative architecture. The beginning, not the resolution. Finally, we need to understand something crucial. This film is not designed to resolve. It is designed to rebuild. Marvel is clearly initiating a new trilogy, which means questions will remain open, conflicts will escalate, transformations will be incomplete. This is an origin story after the origin, a reconstruction of Spider-Man, not from absolute zero. Not as a teenager, but as something far more complex. So, can a hero be rebuilt without losing what made him human? Is one of the many questions we could ask from this movie. So, si juntamos todas las capas, psicológica, biológica, moral, narrativa, lo que tenemos no es simplemente una nueva película de Spider-Man, tenemos un experimento, un Spider-Man solo, inestable, cuestionando sus propios valores y rodeado de un mundo que ya no lo entiende. Esto abre la puerta a 3 giros más potentes. Peter se convierte temporalmente en una amenaza. El enemigo real no es físico, sino mental. Se inicia la era de los mutantes dentro del MCU. Pero la pregunta final no es sobre Marvel, es sobre el personaje y, en el fondo, sobre nosotros. Si lo pierdes todo, tu identidad, tu cuerpo, tus relaciones, ¿qué es lo último que te queda para seguir siendo tú? Eso fue todo en el PAI. 31 de julio espero poder estar viendo esa peli porque me gustan mucho las películas de Marvel y sobre todo de Spider-Man. La paso muy bien. Adiós.